Today we are going to discuss a very important topic which falls in the subject of political science, and the paper is Indian Politics Part 2. This module is written by Neeru Sharma, and the paper coordinators were Professor Rekha Saxena and Professor Sanjay Lodha. And I'm Ashutosh Kumar. I'm a subject coordinator of political science, and I'm going to make this presentation based on the unit written by Neeru Sharma. See, like of late, we are seeing the relevance of the subject. If you you read the newspapers, you follow the news items on the media, the social media, electronic media, print media. Lots of demands are coming from different parts of India. You have demand for Bundelkhand coming from the West Bengal state. You have the demand for Bodoland from Assam. You have a demand for Harit Pradesh from the western UP region. You have the demand for a separate Maru Pradesh from the Rajasthan region, that's this Jaisalmer area. Then you also have the demand for Kodadu state from Karnataka. You have older demand for separate Vidarbha in Maharashtra. So you have demands. You have another very old demand for Bundelkhand, which would be basically coming from the part of the UP and Madhya Pradesh. So you have demand for many smaller states coming from different parts of India. How to explain this? How to understand why so many demands are coming up, and why what has been the really approach of Indian state or the central state towards this formation of new states. For understanding this issue, we should go back to the colonial period. See, the British, when they dominated, when they ruled over India, you should understand that a major part of India was under the princely states. So it was not that the British were ruling direct all over India. More than 1/3 part of India was under the more than 550 princely states. Some people say 563, some people say 561, and some people say 552. So the numbers vary, but we had very small princely states and we had very large princely states also, like Jammu Kashmir, Hyderabad, Travancore, we had the Mysore, Patiala. These were the larger princely states. So it differed from, the size differed from one princely state to another, but there were, as I said, so many princely states. And then there was British India. Now, British divided British India into the provinces. And these provinces were divided not on the basis of the cultural or the linguistic recognition or the identities. These provinces were constituted merely on the basis of the administrative convenience for the purpose of the tax collection and all. So at one time you would have a state of Bengal, which would also incorporate the present-day Bihar, Jharkhand and Orissa. So it was like a very large states, large provinces, without really considering the cultural state, ethnic configuration of the local population, and that created a problem. If you refer to the Indian National Congress right from the beginning, the party supported the reorganization of the provinces even in British India on the linguistic basis, on a cultural basis. As early as in 1905, Congress party reorganized its units on the basis of the linguistic criteria. So they would have a separate state units, separate units even in the province of Bengal. On the basis of the language. So they would have a separate unit for what is today Bihar, or separate unit for what is today Odisha on the linguistic basis. Then you refer to 1920 Nagpur session. In the Nagpur session also, the Congress passed a resolution that we should have a linguistic states. They demanded from the then British colonial government that there should be reorganization of the provinces on the language basis. Then 1928, the Motilal Nehru report also raised the demand and asked for the remapping of the India's territory on the linguistic basis. And then you have other resolutions passed by the Congress party from time to time, saying that they would like India to be reorganized on the linguistic basis. And when you say linguistic basis, basically you are saying cultural basis also, because language and culture, they go hand in hand, right? So that was the position of the Congress party during the colonial period. And as you know, the British also acceded to some of these demands in 1912. Bihar was separated from Bengal, and then Odisha was also separated. So gradually there was some kind of remapping of the provinces, but the British were not really very keen to remap the provinces on the linguistic basis. So gradually some kind of remapping of the provinces, but the British were not really very keen to remap the provinces on the linguistic basis. They always saw these provinces merely as the administrative units rather than seeing them as a historical, cultural, linguistic units. 45 pre-princely Indian territory remained under the princely states, and these princely states also hardly were formed on the linguistic basis. They were also basically having different linguistic groups, different linguistic ethnic communities within the same princely states. You can refer to Manipur, you can refer to Hyderabad, princely state of Hyderabad. There was this demand in the during the colonial period that there should be merger of the provinces in such a manner that the one language, one province, that should be the criteria. That was the basic idea. But we find that when India becomes independent, and when there is a Constituent Assembly meeting and referring to this matter, as Robert King has very well pointed out, that now there was a rethinking on the part of the Congress leadership. Why? Maybe because of the partition anxiety. You know, as you know, that communal division led to the creation of Pakistan, division of India. So there was this thinking that maybe that if you organize the Indian states basis, it would promote the sub-national identities, and these sub-national identities in the long run may become like they may promote the secessionist tendencies, and India can be balkanized. And the Constituent Assembly members were very well aware about the India being one of the most diverse and therefore complex society in the world. And so they were now having a rethinking that whether we should have the remapping of the Indian states on the linguistic basis. And in that context, you have Jawaharlal Nehru saying that first thing first. So he said that first we should develop the country in the economic terms. We should modernize ourselves. We should go for nation building. We should inculcate the nationalist feeling among all the people. And then we would think about whether we need to have a kind of reorganization of the states or not. So that was the basic thinking about the issue of the reorganization of the Indian states. And as you know, when India became independent, the first schedule had three categories of the states. The category 1, A, B, C. A had all the provinces, B had the larger and medium while princely states, and then we had the smaller territories in the part C. So centrally administered also. So now there was demand. Obviously the demands were not really post-independent demand. They were there even before India became independent. So there was this what to do about it. So the Constituent Assembly constituted a committee which was called the Dhar Committee. And this Dhar Committee recommended that there should not be reorganization of the state because it would lead to subnationalism, sectarian tendencies, divisive tendencies, and that would be antithetical to the idea of an integrated Indian state. Granville Austin has very well pointed out. So on the basis of this, preserving the unity and integrity, territorial unity and integrity of India, to promote a common nationalism across the territory of India, there was really not much enthusiasm now when India became independent on the part of the constitution makers to agree to this idea about reorganization of the state. This JVP committee, the full form, as Emma Mosley points out, J for Jawaharlal Nehru, V for Vallabhbhai Patel, and P for Patabi Sitaramaiah. These three members of the Constituent Assembly, they formed a committee, and the committee was asked to give report about, recommendation about the reorganization of the states. And as happened, the JVP committee also, just like the Dar committee, did not really approve the idea of the reorganization of the Indian states on the linguistic basis. They were happy with status quo, the larger states. In fact, JVP committee, the Patabi, if you go through the record, the Patabi Sitaramaiah wanted reorganization of Uttar Pradesh because he thought that Uttar Pradesh was too big for a good administration. And the same view was held by, even though Ambedkar was saying that language should be the basis for the reorganization of the state, but it should not be like the one language, one state. It should be one state, one language. So there can be two states, two different states having the one common language. So there can be a Uttar Pradesh and there can be another Uttar Pradesh, another territory, another province in Uttar Pradesh where you have Hindi-speaking people. So Hindi-speaking people can have as many states. Like in the case of Maharashtra also, he said that why can't we have a Marathi-speaking states and we can have another Marathi-speaking states also. So you can have more than one state where the people speak the same language. But the language should be the criteria. That was the viewpoint of B.R. Ambedkar, as Asha Sarangi, a professor in JNU, has very well pointed out in one of her EPW articles. So that was the thinking, that we should postpone this process of reorganization of the state because it can lead to secessionism, it can really weaken the national unity, the nationalist feeling, and it would come in the way of the nation building, or it would come in the way of even planning process where you needed a bigger state as an economic unit. But this was the viewpoint of the Constituent Assembly members, Congress leadership at the center, but this viewpoint was not really, evidently not shared by the state level leaders, even coming from the Congress party. All those kind of problems were coming up. Maharashtra, at that time it was called the state of Bombay. There was a demand for separate Marathi-speaking state and a separate Gujarati-speaking state. So lots of demands were coming up. And in 1953, there was a civil war. There was a linguistic-based violence involving the civilian population. And there was one Ramalu who unto death, and he died because of this fasting. And there was, after his death, there was a kind of, there was a violence against the people of one linguistic community against another linguistic community. And so in 1953, the Karnataka came up as a first linguistic state. And then you had parts also. So finally, in 1956, there was this establishment of Justice Fazal Ali Committee was involved with the State Reorganization Commission. And Justice Fazal Ali Commission, this state reorganization, asked for the responses from the different states, and they used certain criteria. What were the criteria? One, they said that the demand should not be communal, because in a secular country, you cannot really listen to the communal demand. That was one of the reasons why Punjabi Suba demand was not accepted for a fairly long period of time. Then there was another criteria also, that this the creation of a new state should not come in the way of implementation of the 5-year plan. Then the demand should not be secessionist. Then the demand should be popular demand. It should not be drawing room demand. So there should be popular support for the creation of for the reorganization of the state, or for the creation of a new state. So I said, to recapitulate, that the demand should not be communal, the demand should not be secessionist, the demand should be a popular demand, and the demand should not come in the way of implementation of 5-year plan. And then also the demand should not meet with the furor or kind of resentment from the parent state. So all these criteria were seen and the language was considered as a secular basis for the reorganization of the state, because religion was discarded after the partition experience, that the religion would be very costly affair if we consider the religion as the basis for the formation of the new state. So you have this first phase of reorganization of the state starting in the form of the 7th Constitutional Amendment 1956. And then you had the creation of Maharashtra, creation of Gujarat, you have creation of the reorganization of the state in the form of Kerala, modern day Kerala. Then you had a Tamil Nadu, at that time it was called Madras, and then you had a Karnataka coming out from the area. Then you had this Hyderabad, Karnataka region becoming Andhra, and then the coastal Andhra becoming part of it, and so becoming Andhra. First you had the coastal Andhra becoming the Andhra, and then Hyderabad region, which was earlier princely state, becoming part of that, and so Andhra Pradesh. So Andhra was created in 1953, and Andhra Pradesh came into result as a result of the 7th Constitutional Amendment. So this was the first phase when you had the linguistic states being created, especially in the South India, in the Western India, the linguistic states were created. There was a similar demand coming from the Punjab, post-partition Punjab, on the basis of the Punjabi Suba, for the Punjabi linguistic groups. This demand was not really recommended by the Justice Fazal Ali Committee, the State Reorganization Commission, and one of the reasons was that because of the communalization of the language in 1961 census and in 1951 census, and also in 1961 census, many Punjabi-speaking people, those who were Hindus, they identified the Hindi as their language. So there was this Hindi, Hindu, Hindustan, and there was a Punjabi language which was associated with the Sikh population. Something which happened to the Urdu language also. As you know, Urdu declined pretty fast after the partition because Urdu was considered as the language of the Muslims. Though at one time Urdu was very popular in the pre-partition Punjab. It was, in fact, the language of all the communities living in Punjab, not after partition, right? So, but ultimately, you know, this Punjabi Suba movement was launched by Akali Dal, and there was a lot of resentment. And ultimately, in 1966, Punjabi Suba was granted, and Punjab was reorganized, and the Hindi-speaking people went to Hindi-speaking areas, became part of Himachal, and also Haryana was created. And PEPSU, which was basically the princely states, Punjab, Patiala and East Punjab provinces, princely states, PEPSU was created in 1948, and in 1956 it was merged with Punjab. And then in 1966, Punjab is again reorganized. So Punjab, before partition, at the time of partition, and then in 1956, and then in 1966, Punjab has undergone the reorganization. Likewise, Himachal becoming a state, then becoming the union territory, and again becoming the constituent state of Indian Union. Then we go to the second phase of the state reorganization. And in the second phase, what we find is that now it's not only the language, but also the ethnicity, tribal. We have tribal states being created. And many union territories, like, as I referred, Himachal Pradesh, Goa, becoming now full-fledged constituent states of Indian Union. So that was the second stage, which would go from 1966 to 1999, when you have, basically 1990, when you have many union territories, especially in the northeastern states, they becoming first the union territories and now then becoming full-fledged constituent states. You can refer to Arunachal Pradesh, which was NEFA. Now it became a full-fledged state. You had Nagaland, you had Tripura, you had other states coming up. And basically these states like Nagaland, Meghalaya, Arunachal Pradesh, they all were created on the basis of their distinct tribal identities, right? So that was the second phase. The third phase starts with the demand for the states not only on the basis of the language, culture, or ethnicity, but also on the basis of greater demand for greater development, greater democracy. And there you have the watershed event was like the creation of the three states, namely at that time it was called Uttaranchal, which has now become Uttarakhand. So Uttaranchal was created, then Jharkhand was created, and Chhattisgarh was created in 1999 as a result of a bill which became reality in 2000. So all these states came up, the three new states came up in the new millennium. So same that you have the Maithili speaking. So you have demand for Mithilanchal, separate Mithilanchal from truncated Bihar, right? Then you have other dialect communities, and you have the provinces. Now, as you know, the constitution, we should refer that also, because when it comes to the creation of a smaller states have no role to play. Under Article 3, you refer to Article 2, 3, and 4. Article 2 says that a new territory can be inserted, can become part of India as a result of a parliamentary act. As you know, Sikkim became part of India. Sikkim was an independent state. It became part of India as a result of 36th Constitutional Amendment, 1975. And that is under wide Article 2. Article 3 says that for the creation of a new state, all is needed is that an ordinary legislative bill has to be introduced either in the Lok Sabha or in the Rajya Sabha, but that legislative bill needs recommendation, prior recommendation of the President of India. President, before giving his recommendation, would refer the matter to the concerned state legislature. For example, if Telangana was to be created, the matter was referred to the Andhra Pradesh, erstwhile Andhra Pradesh, pre-reorganization Andhra Pradesh legislature for its opinion. And there the president gives a stipulated period of time. Before that period of time, the state legislature has to give the opinion, whether the parent state legislature has to give its opinion, whether it wants to reorganization of the state or it doesn't want the reorganization of the state. In the case of Telangana, the state legislature did not really approve the idea of the reorganization of the state. Even then, the opinion of the concerned state legislature is not binding on the President of India. And in this case, as you know, in the case of Telangana, despite the disapproval of the Andhra Pradesh state legislature, the President gave the go-ahead. President recommended the introduction of the bill, of Telangana bill, and Telangana was created. So what you need is that a legislative bill has to be introduced in the Lok Sabha or in the Rajya Sabha. It needs a recommendation of the President of India. President, before giving the recommendation, would refer the matter to the concerned state legislature. The concerned state legislature has to give its opinion within the stipulated period of time. The opinion of the concerned state legislature is not binding on the President. President can still can still recommend the introduction of the bill, and once the bill is introduced, either in the Lok Sabha or in the Rajya Sabha, it needs to be passed by both Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha by simple majority, and then the new state can be created. It's as simple as that. So, the Indian Union is indestructible, but Indian states are very much destructible, and the center has all the powers to create a new state, to alter the boundary of the state, to change the name of the state, and also to create a new, smaller states. And as a result, what we find is that of late there is a lot of debate, because people have this opinion that some states have been created because of the political opportunism, where both polity-wide parties, coalition-making parties, Congress and BJP, thought that it was politically prudent, it would bring the electoral dividend to them if they agreed to the demand for the creation of a smaller state. Example is always given about Uttarakhand, because Uttarakhand movement was a very new movement. You know, the movement had started in 1995, and then by 1999, Uttaranchal at that time was created. Whereas many older demands like Vidarbha, which has been lingering for decades, they have not been fulfilled. So there is a lot of debate about whether we should have a smaller state or not. There are arguments in favor, there are arguments against it. The arguments in favor are that the smaller states have done better than the parent state. You can refer to the Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, and Uttarakhand. They have done better than their parent state in economic terms over the period. Then secondly, that it has been also argued, as I said, that administratively it is better if you have a small, compact, culturally homogeneous state. And probably smaller states, the people are nearer to the government, their representatives are nearer to the electorate, so there is a better kind of governance, better kind of administrative structure, and which benefit the people. Also, the third argument is that how to meet the cultural aspirations of the people, because now the people are becoming more and more aware about their rights, and with the deepening and widening of India's democracy, the people belonging to the different communities, linguistic, cultural, ethnic communities, they want greater share in the political power. And probably there is a much more demand for the government job and all. So opportunities, resources, sharing the resources and all. So that way it makes sense if you have a smaller states. But there are pitfalls also. One can argue that smaller states really weaken the sense of national unity, because it promotes a narrow parochial kind of identities and the narrow thinking among the people. The second, one can say that smaller states are also economically not viable. See, like many, we have 10 special category states, and most of these special category states have remained special category states, and they are smaller states. They were created on the basis of language or religion and all. So this social and economic viability is very important, that whenever a new state is created, the smaller or bigger new state is created, it should be socially as well as economically viable. It should not become dependent on the central grants and all. The third thing is about security. Like B.N. Krishna committee with regard to Telangana also referred this matter, that when you have these smaller states are not really very good in meeting the challenge to the national unity. For example, you can see Chhattisgarh, a small state, is unable, really not very successful in meeting the Naxal crisis, the insurgency perpetrated by the Naxal forces, whereas a bigger state like Andhra Pradesh or a relatively bigger state like West Bengal have succeeded in combating Naxal violence. There is another factor which we should also keep in mind, that most of the smaller states, you have the politicians the coming to power, they are inexperienced, and then you have a problem like wide scale, the inefficiency and the defection, and the kind of like Goa is a very good example of rampant defection from one party to another, instability, political instability. You can refer to Jharkhand, very high level of corruption. This is not to say that the bigger states are not prone to corruption and misgovernance, but some of the experiences, what I'm saying is that there is no guarantee that if you have a smaller state, you would have a very good governance, or you would have a very high level of developmental experience and all. Small can be early also. Small can be beautiful, but small can be early also. So we should understand that there is no foolproof. And then you also have a lot of expenditure coming up when you create a small state, because you create a new capital, you just state Dehradun, and you have all kind of new administrative infrastructure, lots of new appointments and all. And what is the guarantee that you would fulfill the cultural and the aspirations of the people? Because you have like, if you create a, suppose you create a Bodo land, what about the non-Bodos living there? You create a separate, Gorkha land. What about the Bengalis living in the Gorkha land? So this problem would continue. You know, you have, India is such a diverse country that if you take one unit, like see, Nagaland you created, right? Nagaland has been created. Now there is a demand for greater Nagaland, Nagalim. They are asking for the territory from Arunachal Pradesh, they are asking some territory from Assam. So this is something, this problem is intractable. You cannot really fulfill all the cultural aspirations by reorganizing the state. And how many new states you can create? So to conclude, I would say that why can't we have a second Reorganization Commission. I have written on this in Economic and Political Weekly. I have argued there that why can't we have a second Reorganization Commission? Let's have all the demands coming up and let's have a popular opinion. Let's have an objective thinking, which demands have to be accepted, which demands are not to be accepted. And then you have a problem like the wide-scale efficiency and the kind of like Goa is a very good example of a rampant defection from one party to another, instability, political instability. You can refer to Jharkhand, very high level of corruption. This is not to say that the bigger states are not prone to corruption and misgovernance, but some of the experiences, what I'm saying is that there is no guarantee that if you have a smaller state, you would have a very good governance, or you would have a very high level of developmental experience and all. Small can be early also. Small can be beautiful, but small can be early also. So we should understand that there is no foolproof. And then you also have a lot of expenditure coming up when you create a small state, because you create a new capital, you just state there are the kind of ready infrastructure, lots of new appointments and all. And what is the guarantee that you would fulfill the cultural and the aspirations of the people? Because you have like, if you create a, suppose you create a Bodo land, what about the non-Bodos living there? You create a separate Gorkha land. What about the Bengalis living in the Gorkha land? So this problem would continue. You know, you have, India is such a diverse country that if you take one unit, like see, Nagaland you created, right? Nagaland has been created. Now there is a demand for greater Nagaland, Nagaland. They are asking for the territory from Arunachal Pradesh. They are asking some territory from Assam. So this is something, this problem is intractable. You cannot really fulfill all the cultural aspirations by reorganizing the state. And how many new states you can create? So to conclude, I would say that why can't we have a second Reorganization Commission? I have written on this in Economic and Political Weekly. I have argued there that why can't we have a second Reorganization Commission? Let's have all the demands coming up and let's have a popular opinion. Let's have an objective thinking, which demands have to be accepted, which demands are not to be accepted. And also think about the social, economic and political cost of creation of a new state, every new state. This should be seen. And then I also would say that Article 3 and 4, it doesn't give really any say to the concerned states. So there should be better say on the part of the states also, because, you know, there's a lot of hard feeling when you take away the territory from a parent state, you create a new state. And then, like, for example, take the Bihar and Jharkhand. Like the Bihar at that time lost lots of revenue because all the minerals were coming from Jharkhand area. And Jharkhand is one of the richest state in India in terms of the minerals and the resources, natural resources. So what was the compensation for Bihar? So a very poor state. So lots of hard feeling can also come. So I would say that there should be a proper rethinking about the demand for smaller states, and it should not be just on the basis of political convenience on the part of the parties in power. There should be much better, objective, impartial thinking about such demands coming up from different parts of India, and then there should be a kind of proper policy framework for accepting or not accepting the demands for new states, because you can't have, like, you know, if you say that we want to create a new state on the cultural or ethnic or linguistic or whatever basis you say, then India is such a diverse country that you would end up like Rashiduddin Khan, I remember, argued that we would have more than 50 states in India. Like Pradeep Kumar, you can refer. All the Emma Mosley, this Asha Sarangi, then you have this Sudha Pai. They all have argued that because of the colonial legacy, the princely states legacy, the uneven pattern of development in India, especially after the implementation of the new economic policy under the shadow of globalization, such demands are bound to come. So it's better to have a kind of economic system, better political system where different communities' demands can be addressed, and there should be a share, and there should be a feeling of power sharing, political power sharing, resource sharing. So federalism, both as an idea as well as a process, should be adopted. And then I think this debate about the smaller states would not be there. In any case, there is a shift in the federal thinking. And then I think this debate about the smaller states would not be there. In any case, there is a shift in the federal thinking. So now there is not such an apprehension like it was in the 1950s. Let's have a smaller state, but let's have a very good ground. Let's have a very objective ground to accept the demand for smaller states. It's not like just for the sake of electoral calculation and all, that you accept some demands and you reject other demands. So that creates a lot of heart burning, and that puts a strain on the Indian federal social fabric. Thank you very much. I suppose that you gained from this presentation. You have a better idea, a better understanding about the issue, like why smaller states are being demanded and how should we tackle the demand for the smaller states. Thank you very much.